world. This is the Fan and Fanatic Podcast. I'm Parker Grelecki, a.k.a. the Fan and Fanatic, and with me as always is my broadcast partner,
Dad,
a.k.a. Ryan Grelecki. I've got a passion for all things sports. So, on the Fan and Fanatic Podcast, we'll talk to anyone and everyone from all over the world of sports who will sit still long enough to answer my questions.
that's right. Now, as a result of complications from severe brain damage at birth, unfortunately, Parker will never be able to physically play sports, but that cannot and has never stopped him from loving everything about sports and dreaming of a career in broadcasting. So each of our guests graciously gives of their time on this podcast to invest in Parker's dream and to help him be part of the sports world he loves so dearly.
Now, let's play ball! Welcome back, Fanatic Addicts, to another playoff 10 episode of the Fan and Fanatic Podcast. It's my absolute honor to introduce my guest, Auburn Tigers royalty in the house, Mr. Terry Henley. So, Mr. Terry Henley, please tell everyone who you are, where you're from, and your connection to the world of sports.
Well, I was an Auburn Tiger from 1969 to 1972. I was the most valuable player of the Southeastern Conference. I led the conference in rushing. I led them in scoring. Played in the Senior Bowl. I tried to play with 4 or 5 other NFL teams, and I currently live in Birmingham. I'm employed with Palomar Insurance and have been for 40 years. And I'm a big supporter of the Auburn Tigers and football, college football in general.
So, I know this isn't an Auburn-related question, but you know John Parker Wilson at Alabama? Football player turned radio announcer for said Crimson Tide Sports Network. Anyways,
Yes.
so as you know, he played for the Atlanta Falcons, and a few years ago, I was fortunate enough to interview the team. And when I got to John Parker Wilson, my dad told me that he played football at Alabama, and I said, War Eagle. And John Parker Wilson said, Dad, will you take it from here?
Yeah, it was basically, that's like the worst burn I've ever gotten. And it wasn't a few years ago, it was a decade ago. So this was a pretty good burn from a very young child to this young NFL quarterback. So it's funny. And I do also have to give a shout out here. I don't know, Mr. Henley, if you paid attention to Parker's podcast, but for some reason it has been very heavy Alabama. Lots of people connected to the University of Alabama. So to finally have somebody from Auburn makes, of course, his mom very happy. And as you know, his grandfather and grandmother very happy too.
Well, I'm very proud to be on your show.
Well, thank you.
I've heard so much about you from your granddad, for sure. You know, he wears the badge around on his chest about you, and so I'm honored to be on your show.
Why, thank you. So it just so happens that y'all y'all worked at Palomar, and y'all like ran into each other at J&M last weekend. If I remember correctly?
That is correct. We have a book written about the 72 team that I played on as a senior, and it's a fantastic book called Teammates for Life. And I was there at the Johnsonville J&M bookstore with 6 or 7 of my teammates signing the book and people buying it. So yes, your dad came up and spoke, and I hadn't seen him in a little while, and we had a nice conversation.
It was my grandfather.
Your grandfather. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. But did y'all know each other before, or is that the first time y'all met?
Oh no, he worked here at Palomar, so I got to see him quite a bit.
Very good, very good. So, what position did you play at Auburn?
I was a running back.
So who was who was handing off to you at the time? Who was the quarterback?
I played 2 years. I played my sophomore year and junior year in the backfield with Pat Sullivan, the Heisman Trophy winner.
Yep.
I also stood next to Terry Beasley which was the Blitnikoff winner and everything at receiver. And so I did that my first 2 years, and then they graduated, and we left in 1972. We only were picked to win one game. We only had 3 starters coming back on offense, and we had a quarterback that warmed up in the first game with his jersey on backwards. He was so nervous, and so then they were picked to win one game, and instead of winning one, we won 10.
So
we beat 5 of the top 10 in the country, and we beat the preseason national champs that year.
So who was the coach at the time?
Coach Shug Jordan was the coach, the winningest Auburn coach in Auburn football history.
So Shug Jordan is a nickname, obviously, for Mr. Ralph Shug Jordan. Did he ever did he ever reveal how in the world he got that nickname?
Well, yes, he and I used to travel quite a bit together at speaking engagements and all, and he got the name for his love of sugar cane that was prominently grown in Selma, Alabama quite a bit, and his love for that, and they named him Shug.
So it just so happens that as you know, being an Auburn fan, you know that the Iron Bowl is probably one of the most storied rivalries in college football, if not the most.
There's no question about it. On all the pro teams and all the travels that I've been around the country with Auburn University, I can't tell you how many people have come up to me, especially teammates that I would meet during training camp and things from other schools. They would come up to me and tell me what it's like to play in a ball game like the Iron Bowl. Tell me what it's like. Tell me what it's like to have 50,000 people in orange and blue, and 50,000 people in that other reddish color that they have over there. So, and I told them it's unbelievable. It's a privilege that very few people get to experience.
So the reason why I bring that up, it just so happens that there was a football game that there was an Iron Bowl in 1972 that was deemed the Bama punt game. Do you remember that game?
Oh, I remember it quite well. I didn't make enough yards to put a mobile home on, but we managed to block 2 kicks and kick a field goal and win the ball game 17-16.
Wow. Very interesting. Very interesting. So any Shug Jordan coaching stories?
Oh God, I could keep you going for hours talking about Coach Jordan, because he and I traveled all the time. And my sophomore year, we were fixing to start, and of course you couldn't play on the varsity until you were a sophomore. You had to play on the freshman team your freshman year. And so we were getting ready to start fall practice, and I felt I was running on the second team, and I thought I was better than the senior football player that was in front of me. So I went over to Coach Jordan's office and told him I wanted to talk to him, and he said, certainly. So I go in and sit down, and he said, what do you want to talk about? I said, well, I'm better than Mickey Zofko, and I need to be starting. He leaned across his desk and looked at me, and he said, Terry, you are better than Mickey Zofko. You are better than Mickey Zofko. And when we put you in the game, we know something exciting is fixing to happen. But we don't know if it's for our team or the other team. We know you're going to run 50 yards sideways, 50 yards backwards, 50 yards forward. We have not a clue what you're fixing to do. The only thing we do know is it's going to be exciting. So what else can I answer for you? I said, well, you answered it all in that one statement. He said, well, just go back there and work harder,
Speaking of running backwards, there is another game in the Iron Bowl, which you probably want to forget, but the wrong way Bo game, where Bo Jackson ran the wrong way.
Well, I certainly do remember that. And I remember the foolish coach that called that play. I remember who did that. When you got a Heisman Trophy, one of the best football players or the best natural athletes in the world, Bo Jackson, and you're at the 1 yard line or 2 yard line, and you give it to somebody else and not Bo, that doesn't make any sense, does it?
No. But anyways, how did you even decide to go to Auburn?
I was born an Auburn man. And I'm gonna die an Auburn guy. I mean, I used to drive around in a pickup truck with my granddaddy, because we lived with my granddaddy, and he'd drive me around, and he and I listened to Mr. Buddy Rutledge call the Auburn games. He was a big Auburn guy, and I was just I was a little boy, 5, 6, 7 years old, and that's what we would do on Saturdays, would be drive around, and that just kind of locked me in for life.
So like at Jordan-Hare Stadium nowadays, they have those little like radio things that was made by Live Sports Radio, I think. Is that right?
Yes.
Did they have those back in like okay? So so part one of that question: did you grow up going to Auburn games with your family?
No, I didn't go to Auburn until I was in the 8th grade. When I was in the 8th grade, they let teams come in from various high schools wearing your jersey. If you wore your jersey, you got in free. So when I was in the 8th grade, they carried a carload of us down to Auburn, and I stood in that stadium and on that railing and watching all those big men run down that field, and I listened to the sound of "Here Comes the Tigers" over the loudspeaker when they came out from the tunnel down there. And the only thing I did was go back home and say, I want some of this. I want some of this.
So did they have the Live Sports Radio thing back in like your days? Or is that
had the live radio broadcast?
No. Like, did they have the option where you could use the Live Sports Radio device to listen to said broadcast in the stadium?
Well, when I was the transistor radio didn't come out to the 60s, or so. So, that's about what you listen to when you'd see all these people with a little handheld radio and they made earplugs for them later on and things like that, on through the 70s. So you would see some of this.
So wait, you know what I'm talking about when I say Live Sports Radio, right?
There was no Live Sports Radio, just the calling of the game.
Out of all your experiences, what was the greatest moment or memory?
Well, I think the greatest moment in my memory was that I got to play for Auburn University. I got to be an Auburn Tiger. I got to go out and play football every day. I got to enjoy it every day. And I never got tired of it. It was just a special thing to me, And I guess the moment that Auburn came knocking on the door and said, we want you to be an Auburn Tiger, was one of the greatest moments I ever had.
So what is your favorite tradition at Auburn?
Well, I guess my favorite tradition at Auburn is the rolling of Toomer's Corners, seeing that I got the thing started by saying we were going to beat the number 2 out of Alabama, and then after the game, they all took toilet tissue and rolled the Toomer's Corner up there after the 17-16 ball game.
Wait, so that's actually how Toomer's Corners, like the rolling of the two, like, is that actually how the toilet paper came to be? Like someone said, we're going to beat the out of Alabama, and that's why they do toilet paper.
They had me on the radio leading up to the ball game in 1972, and the radio announcer said, well, you got to play the mighty Alabama. You're number 2 in the country. What do you got to say? I said, what I got to say? I said, we're going to Birmingham and we're going to beat the number 2 out of them. So, that's what's the next thing you know, we block the kicks and win 17-16, and next thing you know, they're rolling Toomer's Corner.
So another like a tradition that they do nowadays at Auburn is that the eagle flies every home game. Did they have that when you were playing at Auburn?
No, they bring the eagle out, and he would sit on a stand there in the stadium when I was playing. He would sit there during the game on this perch, and one of his handlers would stand beside him or so. But no, they didn't fly back then.
So, can I ask you about another live mascot?
Go ahead.
So you know how like LSU has a live tiger, Mike the Tiger?
Oh my goodness, yes I do.
So one of our other guests said that they put him next to the visiting team, and every time the visiting team came out of the tunnel, he would just, growl and roar and whatnot. Did you? And one of our producers said that scared the living you-know-what out of him. Did Mike scare the living you-know-what out of you, Terry Henley?
It didn't bother me. It didn't bother me. I growled back at him, but the only thing I can tell you, it was sitting right outside our dressing room door, and we had several teammates that they had to take a hand towel and put in their face mask, and so they couldn't see him or hear him, and lead them out so they wouldn't see him growling at them.
All right. So here's a two-part question. Another two-part question. I mean, so what is your favorite stadium that you've played in for a neutral site or a road game?
Well, I enjoyed all of them. The only difference, their field was 100 yards long and ours was 100. And, so it was no different what field I played on. The fans, the crowd, or anything, I never bothered me. None of that I was ever concerned about. And so we would, but I enjoyed playing in Jackson, Mississippi, playing Ole Miss when I was a senior. I ran the ball 34 times that night, and we beat them 19-13, and they were like number 6 in the country or something like that, and undefeated. And I did that on my birthday, so I guess I was happy that day. Was
this in the Deuce McAllister days?
Oh no, I'm much older than Deuce. Much older than Deuce.
What about Michael Oher?
Michael Oher? Oh yeah, I'm a lot older than Michael.
Okay, how about as a fan? Favorite stadium that you visited as a fan?
As a fan, the best place, favorite place I ever visited, I guess, I would have to say, Tennessee. I went to several Tennessee games. I've been to LSU several times. And I would have to say the Tennessee people. I mean, they seem to be very nice and things. And I like South Carolina. South Carolina is a great setting, and they have all the cabooses lined up there that people tailgate in and go around the stadium, and that's a nice little added thing, like what we have the Tiger Walk, and and Ole Miss has the Grove and things. They have the cabooses lined up.
Very good, very good. So, do you have a sporting event that is on your bucket list?
Oh, sporting! I want to send Auburn. I want to see Auburn win another national championship or many more national championships before I leave this earth.
And to think we were one, to think we could have won that game, a third national championship if it weren't for Jameis Winston and Kelvin Benjamin. My dad.
Well, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'll help you out if we'd have tackled the boy at the 45-yard line, not let him break those 2 tackles, and he ran it down to the 5 or 10-yard line. If we'd have tackled him, the game would have been over. And then you say if the guy hadn't run the kickoff back where our guy was running down the field and pulls a hamstring, and the guy run right past him because he had a pulled hamstring. And so there was a couple of things there that could have gone our way that could have changed the game, any second.
So funny thing about that game is my co-host, my dad, is a Florida State guy. So my uncle and my grandfather were sitting. My My uncle and my grandfather on his side of the family were in Pasadena for that game.
Oh boy, well, I was there also.
Yeah. Anyways, so do you have a favorite coach do you have a favorite coach or mentor and why? I'm trying to enunciate clearly with the question so you can understand.
You're doing a wonderful job. I thought a lot. I mean, Coach Jordan to me is just what college football is about and what quality of human being is about. He is outstanding. Pat Dye did an outstanding job. I liked him. And Tommy Tuberville, I really, really enjoyed Tommy Tuberville in his tenure at Auburn. And I'm going to enjoy Hugh Freeze and his tenure. I think he is a quality coach. I think he's going to bring a lot of things back to Auburn. And Auburn is a top 5 brand in the country. There's no question about it. It is Auburn. There's only one Auburn. And I assure you he's going to make it prominent here quick.
So in other words, you think Hugh Freeze will dig us out of the hole that Harsin dug us into?
You're exact. You couldn't have put it no better, Parker. Couldn't have put it no better, buddy.
When they first hired Harsin, I was like, sure, okay, they beat FSU. But then I realized that, oh, wait, that win isn't even a quality win. I mean, sure, Boise State's like a mid-major school. But at the time, FSU, they were kind of in a rebuilding phase, if you will.
Okay. Well, we shouldn't have hired Harsons. I mean, that's water over the dam. We shouldn't have hired the AD that hired him either. We shouldn't have hired the president that hired the AD. So it was see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil. All three of them. It took them all out.
Ugh. And to think we were one Tank Bigsby inbound, and to think we were 2 minutes away from beating Alabama. Thanks a lot, Brian. Okay, anyways, enough with the Harsin ranting. Any other stories you think our listeners would like to know?
Well, I mean, I could sit here and tell you all kind of stories. I mean, when in the first game we played in 1972, of course, like I say, we picked to win one game. We go to play Jackson, Mississippi, the opening night. We were the only game being played that year, that day. And in Jackson, we played Mississippi State. We're a 10-point underdog. Coach Jordan gives this speech that we're going to run only 5 plays. We're going to run only 5 plays. I'm fixing to step into a huddle. Of somebody of 6 players that has never been in an SEC game in their life. And my quarterback has put his jersey on backwards, and we're going to run 5 plays. And I got an offensive lineman that took a bath before the game because he said it'd be crowded in there after the game. So now what did I have to worry about? You know what I'm saying? The only thing I did was go out and run the ball 32 times that night and for 150-something yards, and we beat them 14-3.
So you said you played Ole Miss in Jackson, is that right? Mississippi State and Jackson?
Played Ole Miss and Mississippi State, both in Jackson.
And did you say something about that game starting at midnight?
No, the game didn't start at midnight. It was the only game being played. The first one at Mississippi State, we were the only game being played that weekend. See, back then, you only had 3 TV channels. Mm-hmm. So you could only be on TV 2 times every 3 years. So we were only on TV, 2 times. I mean, Pat Sullivan, some of his greatest games, we were not on TV. Yeah. So
can I ask a stupid question? When you said that was the only game on that weekend, do you mean on television or played at all that weekend?
The only game being played at all that weekend. We kicked the season off that year.
Oh, so it was kind of like week 0. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's correct. And then the next weekend we didn't play. We didn't play, and everybody else played. And then the following week, then we fell right in line with everybody else playing, their second game.
So what I'm understanding is back in the day, week 0 only consisted of 1 game, and now it has a whole at least 2 or 3 games.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of like in Atlanta. Sometimes they have the kickoff game, and it's the same principle as what it was back then, except the way the calendar fell, it just worked out that we were the only game being played at that time.
Okay, very good, very good. So, on this podcast, we are all sports fanatics. So, the last question we ask, as a fan, what do you think is the all-time greatest moment in sports?
The all-time greatest moment in sports. All-time greatest moment in sports. I think Usain Bolt winning all the Olympic sprinting records and races that he won those 2 or 3 years running in the Olympics. I thought that was phenomenal. It's a guy, how many he won and never got beat.
Can I ask an additional question? Do you remember the Kick Six game in 2013?
The which game?
The game that Auburn beat Alabama off of that, like when Chris Davis ran that missed field goal all the way back for 109 yards to send the Tigers to the championship game.
Well, that was an exciting time. There's no question about it. And let me tell you something you might know or you might not know. See, Auburn called timeout. They had one, and when Auburn called timeout, before they kicked the ball, that Auburn was lined up, and then Auburn had another timeout, and they called a timeout for the second time. Okay, and when they called a timeout for the second time, is when they sent Chris Davis back to the end zone. Originally, the first time they lined up, Chris Davis was not back to run the kick back. He was up on the line of scrimmage, and then when they called timeout the second time is when they put him back in the end zone. And when they put him back in the end zone, I told Dr. Ed Murray, who was sitting beside me, he said, "What's he going back there for?" I said, "Well, he can run it out of the end zone." He said, "Well, I didn't know that." I said, "You certainly can. He can run this ball. If it doesn't go, beyond the field of play, he can run this ball back," and that's exactly what it did. And that was an exciting moment. Now, I'm probably going to put that above Usain Bolt, yes.
But anyways, the reason why I bring that up is it just so happens that after the game, when the fans were rushing the field, and Rod Bramblett said, and I quote, "They're not going to keep him off the field tonight," my father and I were actually two of the 100,000 fans on the field, and it just
wonderful.
And the ESPN Game Day crew was broadcasting from the field, and so my father lifted me up, and you can see like 1/3 of my face on television, and so. Anyways, all right. Well, thank you for your time, Mr. Henley. All right, fanatics. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of The Fan and Fanatic. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for all of your support. Don't forget to follow or subscribe, or whatever your podcast app says to do. And you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. For my broadcast partner, Ryan Grelecki, this is Parker Grelecki saying, game, set, match.